Year two isn't over yet, but there's already discussion about what we can hope for and expect in year three of Skull and Bones. But we still have one more season. I guess it's going to be February 10th when they launch year two, season four. The two highlights of season four will be the Corvette. They're finally adding a second large ship to the game. It's going to be, I guess, a hybrid, like a support DPS style large ship. I think it's going to come with the Dow or a version of the Dow that you can use for like going and hunting with and docking back on the Corvette. And we're supposed to be getting another sea monster finally, the Kraken, added to season four of year two, Skull and Bones. But I would like to look ahead to what I would like to see in year three. By the way, what would you like to see in year three of Skull and Bones? Feel free and let me know below in the comment section. So what we do know about year three of Skull and Bones is it's happening. And it's probably going to be, if we go by the release date of the final season of year two, which is going to be February 10th, I guess, then they're probably going to want like 2 or 3 months to go by of season four, year two, before they officially launch a new season, a new year. And now I'm being followed by the ghost ship. I just came up here just to do a video, and I didn't want to be haunted by no ghosts. Anyways, back to what we were talking about. So year three will most likely launch either May or June 2026, most likely. But we have some idea of what's coming in year three. Well, at least one thing in particular. Everything else is still a mystery. But the big thing they talked about during the last deck stream a couple weeks ago was they were going to be focusing year three on improving naval combat. And this is something a lot of players have been asking for. So I definitely want to see an improvement to naval combat. And hopefully by sometime in year three, we get land combat as well as officers, which unfortunately have been put on hold, but they'll probably be released sometime in year three. Speaking of naval combat, one thing I think that needs to be improved is the culverins. My better half, Riley, and I were talking about this the other night, and long story short, she made the case that culverins overall deal a lot less damage than some of the other weapons in the game. And as a traditionalist, when it comes to using culverins on ships, because when I think of a tall ship, a sail ship, I think of cannons, culverins. So while you're working on improving naval combat, you should also buff the cannons. I'm not saying make them OP compared to other weapons like the demi cannons, torpedoes, etc. But I think that the culverins deserve a little bit more oomph in combat. So please consider improving the strength and firepower of culverins in year three. Next is adding clean versions of two ships from year one that a lot of people would like to see clean versions of. And this is something I've asked for before. I'm going to ask for it again. The brig obviously has had things added to it by design that a lot of players would like to see removed. Some of those things you can see obviously on the ship. So I'm hoping that maybe by year three, we get a clean variant of the brig. Plus the brig probably needs a buff as well. I feel like it's kind of weak sauce compared to other ships, so it kind of harkens back to the whole naval combat thing, improving naval combat and balancing across the board. I think that the brig is in desperate need of a clean version as well as perhaps even a buff. But the brig is not the only ship in the game that is a victim of being released in year one that had some cosmetic choices that players don't like. The bark also needs a clean variant. And this is something players have been asking for since both the bark and the brig were put out in their updates last year. And what we've been asking for Ubisoft is pretty simple. Give us a clean version of the bark as well as the brig, please. Hopefully we'll see clean variants of both these ships in year three, perhaps sooner, but I don't know if we'll get that in year two, season four. It'd be nice if we did, but if we don't, hopefully we will be getting clean versions of the bark as well as the brig for players to use in year 3. And I hope that these ships are actually, it's just an option in the menu, similar to, for example, the ship cosmetics when it comes to the armor, where you're able to simply remove armor skins and just keep it as is. Maybe they'll have the ability here for us to like go over and just switch to clean variants of the brig as well as the bark. Year 2 saw the addition of a lot of amazing things to Skull and Bones, including the Arsenal loadout as well as cosmetic loadout for our ships. And this is something I've asked for as well, but hope to see in year 3. Captain clothing loadout at the Vanity shop. We have tons of clothing at the Vanity shop, but unfortunately we have no pre-made loadouts that we're able to put together customization wise. I'm hoping that similar to the ship with the Arsenal and cosmetic loadout, hopefully they'll also give us a cosmetic loadout for our character, up to 20 slots, similar to, once again, Arsenal as well as cosmetic loadouts for the ship. Just go into the cosmetic shop and have equipment, emote, and then maybe a third option below emote for loadout. That way you can save up to 20 different outfits for your character. The warehouse is another topic of hot contention. At the moment, we have a max of 500 spots, and a lot of people would really like to see more space in the warehouse. I don't know if they're ever going to exceed 500, but I think that there might be a way to get around the 500 number when it comes to the weapons and the armor specifically. Now, one of the ways that people have filled up their warehouses is with the ascended weapons as well as ascended armor, but more or less the ascended weapons. We come across ascended weapons that we decide we want to keep, but the problem is we get a whole bunch of those ascended weapons, and unlike the standard version of the weapons, like take the NASCAR long guns for example, like whenever you get regular weapons, they stack, right? But each of these ascended variants, they end up taking their own slot. So what if we had the ability to select NASCAR long guns or any other weapon, the regular variants, and underneath the regular variant, we would also have option to see the ascended variants as well. So we would have a subcategory, so to speak. A quick visual for what I'm talking about when it comes to regular weapons versus their ascended variants can be found in the ship cosmetics, which is actually another topic we're going to get into in just a moment. But first, just imagine this is a regular cannon, right? This figurehead. But I also have some ascended versions of the same cannon. And all you'd have to do is select the cannon, and then you'd have all your ascended variants down here, along with your regular version above it, right? Showing you how many of the regular version you happen to have. But it would also give you a certain amount of room for, say, 20 or 100 ascended variants. Now, maybe it wouldn't be an infinite amount of ascended versions of a weapon or armor, but let's just say they give you at least up to 20 slots in the subcategory, or 50 or 100, or how many they decide to give you. I think this would be a much better alternative for how the ascended weapons and armor are located within the warehouse than the way it currently works. Yeah. Another change that needs to come either by next season or year 3 is adding a white paintbrush icon to some of the cosmetics in the game. Yes, we have the yellow icons for upgrades, but there's also this white paintbrush icon. And what that is for is simply to show players that there's upgraded tiers and variants of various cosmetics already available for you to toggle between in your cosmetic section of your ship. But unfortunately, there are some of these cosmetics that don't have that white paintbrush icon by the name. Case in point, the Winter's Bite set, which is part of the Winter Solstice events, where you could like purchase additional cosmetics in the store with the gems. It now has the ability for you to get some different variations of cosmetics. It would be much easier to find these cosmetics if there was already that white paintbrush icon by certain cosmetics in your inventory. That would automatically let you know that, hey, you have different variations, different tiers of cosmetics to choose from when it comes to this, as well as this. I think you pretty much get the idea. It's a simple solution, but it would make it a lot easier for players to go through the inventory of their ship cosmetics in order to find the various cosmetics that happen to have different tiers, upgradable variants to choose from. Now let's talk about the fleet size really quick. I feel like this needs to be increased because we have all the manufacturing that we're assigning our ships to, and if the game continues to get support with each season, they're going to add a new ship, whether it's a new medium-sized ship or a new large ship. At the moment, we're capped off at 40, which is a lot, but since a lot of my ships are tied to manufacturing, and by the way, I don't even have all the manufacturing in the game, but still, most of my ships are currently locked and docked at the manufacturers that I own. It would be nice if in year 3, we got this number increased for the fleet size from 40 to 50 ships or even higher. The higher the number, the better, in my opinion, when it comes to increasing the fleet size. Now let's talk about something players have been wanting for a quick minute. I don't think this would work on small ships, but at the very least, medium-sized to large ships, we should have a captain's quarters. Now, it's pretty obvious that the back part of the frigate behind the captain and the first officer is perfect for a potential captain quarter on your vessel. They could also, I guess, put a similar room in the helm hideout for us to walk into. So that would be really awesome if we had a captain's quarters that you could use while on your ship docked at either one of the dens or outposts are accessible from the helm. Now there's a variety of things they could put in the captain's quarters, but to start it off, hopefully we were able to customize it to some degree with various decorations, trophies, flags, banners, as well as a captain's desks, captain's chair, captain's bed, along with walls, flooring, etc. I don't imagine a lot of options when it comes to customizing the captain's quarters. And yeah, some of it will probably be purchasable in the store with gold. What a shock. But practicality, what does the captain's quarters offer you besides looking good and being customizable? If we had the ability to access our wardrobe through the captain's quarters, perhaps even a kitchen, a cookery for cooking food, a mailbox where we could just access our mail via the captain's quarters, perhaps a water barrel where like once every few hours we'd be able to get a water flask from the water barrel inside the captain's quarters. Perhaps while we're in the captain's quarters, whether it's a separate room that they add to the helm or medium large ships that we currently own. Perhaps we have the ability within the captain's quarters to also access the various operations from the helms of St. Anne, along with Tellock, whether it's the distillery or the lab up in Tellock. We could do both inside our captain's quarters in order to get orders done and collect the finished products, and perhaps even order registries and supply networks conveniently from the captain's quarters. And just like with the interior of the helm where we have some of our pets on display, it would be awesome if we could at least have one of our pets inside the captain's quarters as well. Maybe it just happens to be the pet that's aboard the ship at the time, whether it's a cat, a bird, iguana, etc. When we're docked, we have the arsenal loadout, which I talked about a moment ago. I used it as an example for why we need a cosmetic loadout for our characters, at least up to 20 slots, similar to the arsenal and cosmetic loadout for our ships. Let's just say hypothetically, you're sailing around in the Indian Ocean and you come across an enemy that requires a fire build to counter, like with the Azure event, but the build you currently have on your ship isn't fire-based. Now, mine obviously is fire-based. Or like with the Halloween event previously, which required a healer-based, but maybe you want to switch between, let's just say, two different types of weapon loadouts on your ship a lot quicker. What if we had the ability to have a primary and secondary loadout option that our crew could switch between on our ship? So you'd go into Arsenal loadout. I guess you would lock the particular alternative loadouts you want, or like the two loadouts you're going to switch between all these. Say you want loadout 1 And then say if I had a loadout 2, I would do loadout 2 right there. But you would also have to make sure in your cargo of your ship that you have the weapons and the furniture that is needed in order to properly switch between the two loadouts. So while you're sailing around the Indian Ocean, you go up against the Azure events, right? Whether it's the Convoy or the Harbinger or the Azure Royale, and it requires fire-based weapons, but you predominantly don't use fire-based weapons. You're able to quickly switch between the two different loadouts. Or if you want to switch from an attack ship to a healing ship on the spot, say you go into battle against a sea monster or an elite captain, and you notice that no one else is healing other players, and you're kind of struggling, you decide on the fly that, okay, I'm going to switch from my offensive weaponry to my support weapons. That way you can, switch weapons. And then whenever you do this, switching from the primary to the secondary loadouts, no matter which way you go, the crew will always yell, switching weapons, switch weapons, changing weapons. Would be an additional thing that the crew would say. Of course, you have to get the crew to voice that, so that requires voice acting. But the downside would be you would always have to have, a set of like weapons and furniture in the cargo. So even though we have 100 slots now in the cargo, which is a lot now compared to 50, you would have to reserve some of those spots and lock them in order for you to properly switch between loadout A and loadout B, or the primary loadout to the secondary loadout. I think a lot of players would be willing to sacrifice a few slots in the cargo inventory in order to have the ability to have two different loadouts to switch between while sailing around the Indian Ocean. Now let's talk about something else I think a lot of us are expecting in year 3. More ships, at least 3, maybe 4 ships in the game. 2 of them I think will probably be large ships. During the deck, it was hinted, if you were paying attention, what one of the future ships is going to be, and I believe it will be the War Junk, which is the same ship used by Lee, Commander Zhang, the Weeping Mother, and this ship will most likely be a year 3 vessel. It'll be a large ship. I feel like if I was to be asked what I would envision this ship to be, a DPS style ship, because it makes sense for it to be DPS. The abilities that the War Junk should have, in my opinion, would be the quick acceleration that Lee has, the ability for her to like go really, really fast out of nowhere. Like she'll be stopped for a moment and then she's able to drop her cells and just like do this boost speed out of nowhere. That would be really awesome if we had the ability to do that with the War Junk. Another ability is the infamous Death Ray, or the Phoenix Wings, or whatever the hell it's called, that she happens to have as a weapon. Now, this weapon would be rechargeable, and it would take a certain amount of time for this unique weapon aboard the War Junk to charge. And by the way, you wouldn't have to do away with the front weapons. Like you would have the regular front weapons that you could use on the War Junk, but along with that would be like a super weapon, a rechargeable super weapon, a death ray, if you will. But it would only recharge like once every few minutes. And you would have to obviously make it a straight shot, right? It would be like a straight shot, and it would literally like do serious damage to whatever target happens to be in front of you. Whether it's a sea monster, an elite warship, a sea lord, you get the idea. So that would be one of the abilities that the War Junk would have, along with that quick acceleration. The next ship is, that ship over there, the Dutch ship, the big ones, the flutes as they're called. Well, at least that's how I think they're pronounced. Another large ship already in the game, just like the War Junk. It would make sense for the flute to become a future large vessel that we can acquire and use in Skull and Bones. So how do I envision the flute? Most likely a tank. It definitely looks like a tank. It doesn't strike me as a DPS style ship. Probably not as a support ship either. This thing will probably be a slow ship, maybe even the slowest of the large ships in the game. But it'll also be maybe the toughest as balance, right? So maybe the slowest large ship, but also it can take more damage than even a frigate can take. So, what is the ability that I think that the flute should have? Well, it's pretty obvious. If you ever fight one of the flutes, especially one of the like commanders or commodores, they have the ability to launch like numerous mortars at you. So I think that should be an ability unique to the flute. Is whenever you fight the flute, or whenever you're using the flute in battle, as long as you have mortars equipped, you can launch more mortars than any other ship in the game, including the frigate. So multiple mortars, and it being the slowest yet tankiest ship in the game, I think that would pretty much work for the flute as a large ship. Now, when it comes to any other vessels, I'm open to suggestions, whether it's a new large ship or a new medium ship. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, because I feel like once they add the war junk and the flute as ships that we can like get blueprints for and build and upgrade and customize, I think that's all the remaining ships that are in the game. I could be wrong about that, but like I said, any other ships y'all like to see, feel free and let me know below in the comment section. Next is a new sea monster. So yeah, we are getting the Kraken, I guess year 2, season 4, hopefully. A sea monster I would like to see in year 3 or in a future season or year of Skull and Bones would be a large sperm whale, large white sperm whale. Well, I mean, I guess one of them could be white. Maybe the other one could be black. But it would be obviously inspired by Moby Dick. And I already have 2 names for the twin male giant sperm whales, Herman and Melville, in honor of the author of Moby Dick. And they would have the ability to ram your ship. Instead of bite your ship, they would ram your ship. And they would also have the ability to leap out of the sky, out of the water, and literally land on your vessel, causing damage. So I think these will be 2 interesting sea monsters to add to the game. Twin giant bull sperm whales to attack your ship in honor of Moby Dick. If the rumors are true regarding the Black Flag Resynced remaster, which is possibly coming spring 2026, also being done by Ubisoft Singapore, it would make sense for there to be some sort of Black Flag Skull and Bones collab, whereas we get some cosmetics in Skull and Bones that are found in Black Flag, such as Edward Kenway's various outfits, along with the different cosmetics for the Jackdaw, purchasable or unlockable for us to use in Skull and Bones. And perhaps they would add a new enemy warship, the Man of War from Black Flag, as a ship for us to come across and fight and sink in Skull and Bones. And maybe eventually we'd be able to get our own Man of Wars. I know some people are like, the Man of War is not a real ship. It didn't exactly exist. It's not its own class. But I'm simply going by the lore of Black Flag as well as Skull and Bones. It doesn't have to be based entirely off a real ship. But Man of Wars do exist in Black Flag. So that would be cool if that was another thing that we got in year 3 of Skull and Bones, courtesy of a Black Flag Skull and Bones collab. And I think that another awesome idea would be if you buy Black Flag and anyone that doesn't already own Skull and Bones would get Skull and Bones for free. Doing so would lead to more people potentially picking up and playing Skull and Bones that purchased Black Flag Resynced that have yet to play Skull and Bones. But I guess you would need some sort of benefit for players that already own Skull and Bones picking up and purchasing Black Flag Remake. Maybe we get some sort of discount off of Black Flag Resynced if we already own Skull and Bones. Maybe like a 10% discount. Or we get a unique cosmetic for the ship or for our character. And by the way, if Black Flag Remake is coming in the spring, I'm definitely going to be playing it start to finish. And hopefully it's a worthy remake to the original Black Flag, because that's easily one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games. And finally, I would say the BTA, the British Tri-Alliance. I feel like that we're going to see the BTA possibly in year 2, season 4 at the earliest, or maybe even year 3, especially with the faction war raging on between the DMC and the company. I think there will be a winner, but it may not be the winner we think. It may not be the company. It may not be the DMC. I think that there is a third factor to all this, and Lucian is, I think, representing the DMC unofficially, and the war is only going to ultimately benefit the BTA, which we encountered in the tutorial of Skull and Bones. So I do think we're going to see the BTA again at the conclusion of the faction war, or at the beginning of year 2, season 4, or perhaps they're waiting to introduce the BTA to the Indian Ocean in year 3. Hopefully, year 3 will continue to see vast improvements to Skull and Bones across the board, such as with the naval combat, like we talked about earlier, improving ships like the Brig, which I feel like need to be buffed a little bit. And there's probably a few other ships that need some improvements here and there as well. And I would definitely like to see a buff to the culverins, because when you think of pirate games or tall ships, sail ships, you also think of the traditional cannons. And I really believe that as a culverin enjoyer that likes to use culverins on a lot of my ships, that these particular weapons absolutely need a buff. So here's hoping that year 3 of Skull and Bones will continue to take the game in the right direction, just like year 2 has, for the most part. What would you like to see in year 3 of Skull and Bones that I didn't mention? And you can also tell me the things you agree with, the things you disagree with regarding what I would like to see in year 3 below in the comments section.